think this girl does not deserve a feature-length film.
You want to trash that legacy? That company that now Disney has screwed up the last 5 years trying to please a small percentage of minorities in America? Yeah, we're sick of it. So the more you do this, Disney, Iger, Ziegler, whatever her name is, yes, this is exactly the backlash you're going to get from parents who have kids who are your customers. You're supposed to win parents over. You're talking to kids, the parents pay for the tickets. You have to be a dummy as a marketer. If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what? Pay her a couple $1 million, go away. We're gonna bring another person to play this role because you just screwed this thing up.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story, just because we cast a guy in the movie. Andrew Burnap, great dude. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood.
Disney's Snow White remake was supposed to be a crown jewel in the company's legacy of live-action transformations. Instead, it became a whirlwind of scandal, fractured friendships, and total box office annihilation. At the heart of this meltdown stands Rachel Zegler, whose off-putting comments toward the classic tale lit the fuse for a controversy that detonated across Hollywood.
Large dump on half of the country, everyone who voted for Trump.
But you are not entitled to call for Trump supporters to be harmed. You are actually not entitled to do that. And so let me just remind you, Rachel Zegler, of what the map looks like, just so you can understand when your Disney movie is coming out, how many people you are wishing harm upon. This is America right now. I will love you through these 4 years as best I can. F Donald Trump. Yeah, totally stable thing for her to be posting, wishing harm upon Trump voters, wishing that we have no peace.
President Rachel Zegler also posted, F Trump kinds of posts on social media. She also said that she hoped that Trump supporters, quote, never know peace.
And they postponed the release of this thing, Ben, for a year because their star, Rachel Zegler, was so unlikable, told all Trump supporters that they could f off, excuse me, but she did. That was just in November. They didn't even know she was going to do that one.
But in the aftermath, Andrew Burnap emerges as the unexpected voice of frustration, apparently so fed up with Ziegler's behavior that he's all but sworn off working with her ever again. It's not just about bruised egos or fleeting on set. Drama. This is about a film that was poised to make hundreds of millions, but became one of Disney's most shocking failures. Critics pounced, fans revolted, and social media turned into a battleground of finger-pointing.
They are pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
Have they ever thought about maybe a little bit of vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing, before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
And the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million.
Every way that Disney changed the story, it changed it for the worse.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of happy.
And right in the crosshairs is Andrew Burnap, an actor who jumped into the fray expecting a career breakthrough, only to find himself dodging controversy after controversy. Before the word disaster was ever paired with his name, Andrew Burnap was the epitome of Broadway brilliance.
The movie is doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
The movie has a major identity crisis.
This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime. And let me go ahead and let you know that they're absolutely f***ing atrocious.
Disney deleted Someday My Prince Will Come and made a modernized feminist alternative.
I sat through the whole thing. This was really bad. It was extremely leftist on every political dimension: racial politics, sexual politics, class politics, regime politics. Its narrative was cowardly. It was just awful.
They say all you have to do to make your wish come true is let it echo, 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 echo.
It's awful, generic. Never mind that the lyrics make no sense at all. All you have to do to make your dream come true is let it echo. Is it like on a metaphorical level?
A Tony Award winner, he'd proven his range and talent in various stage productions. He was lauded for his intense commitment to every role, the kind of actor who invests every ounce of passion into his craft. So when Disney came calling, inviting him to star in a reimagined version of Snow White,
Who wants a movie about true love? What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? It's the outrage.
You know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love.
Oh my God. And she came out and she said, I apologize. Like I went too far, but it wasn't sincere.
Hardcore. They're petrified of some kind of backlash.
I wanted my money back. It was very disappointing.
he saw nothing but possibilities. He'd often spoken about wanting to step beyond the theater circuit and explore the magic of Hollywood. Some called him a rising star, an actor whose next big leap would undoubtedly be onto the silver screen. Burnap himself seemed thrilled, telling friends and colleagues that this was his moment. Rumor has it that he didn't even negotiate too aggressively on salary.
Last week was a very big week, objectively a huge week. We had quite a few announcements. His first live-action film, which is Snow White and the Evil Queen. And that's me, I'm Snow White, which is so funny.
Controversy in Snow White. The dwarves have been eliminated in the live action.
Yeah.
Now it's Snow White and the 7 magical beings.
Wait, it's 7 and the magical beings?
Yeah,
They won't even
7
say
magical
and the 7
beings.
dwarves?
No, because they're not dwarves. For right now, that's the only jobs that are there.
They're remaking the movie. They just got rid of the dwarves. But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures. You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it. The disability, like we're a disability group. You just erased that whole...
Because he believed the exposure alone would be priceless. He wanted to be known not just by theater lovers, but by families and mainstream audiences worldwide. In interviews, ahead of the film's release, Burnap's enthusiasm was infectious. He joked about singing lessons, teased fans about new storyline twists, and seemed genuinely eager to inject fresh life into the Snow White saga. Everyone watching his trajectory believed this production would be the perfect stepping stone, a chance for him to shine, gain worldwide recognition, and perhaps even land more high-profile roles after. Yet, from the moment he arrived on set, the environment was not the harmonic paradise he'd envisioned. Whispers of tension swirled, and it didn't take long for him to sense a dark cloud looming overhead. The exhilaration he felt morphed into apprehension, and day by day, that apprehension hardened into resentment. Resentment allegedly tied directly to Rachel Zegler's attitude. Little did Burnap know, this dream job would soon loom like a nightmare over his future. He was about to learn that sometimes the brightest spotlight can illuminate the ugliest truths and tarnish everything it touches along the way. Rachel Zegler soared to fame on the wings of her debut in West Side Story. Many pegged her as a fresh face with formidable talent, but this time around, the spotlight turned harsh. Instead of a feel-good success story, she found herself in a frenzy of internet backlash that painted her as the antagonist of the Snow White remake. It all started when fans caught wind of her comments about the original 1937 animated film. She brushed off the classic storyline as outdated, implying it lacked substance for modern audiences. Immediately, purists bristled. Online critics erupted in frustration, slamming her for disrespecting the Disney tradition that shaped so many childhoods. Social media posts grew savage, with many fans calling her remarks tone-deaf. But Zegler's controversies weren't limited to just a few off-the-cuff statements. Rumors began to circulate that she had clashed with producers over creative decisions. Allegedly, she had firm ideas about how Snow White should be re-envisioned, championing changes so drastic that some questioned if the final product would even resemble the tale people adored for generations. Then, as if the backlash over her comments wasn't enough, rumors of her dismissive behavior on set trickled out. Crew members whispered about moments of rudeness, a certain self-importance that grated on everyone. Some close to the production claimed she seemed convinced the film would succeed purely because of her presence, no matter how it deviated from tradition. This environment inevitably set the stage for friction with fellow cast members. Enter Andrew Burnap. Eager and professional, he allegedly encountered a figurative brick wall whenever he tried to collaborate with Zegler. instead of a partner. In creativity, it felt like he was dealing with someone who didn't appreciate any viewpoint but her own, and so the seeds of discontent were planted. Zegler's public controversies ignited a firestorm that only grew hotter behind the scenes. The production had barely begun, but the tension was already thick enough to choke on. For a film built on the promise of magic and wonder, the set was turning into a war zone, one that Andrew Burnap found nearly impossible to navigate. By all accounts, Andrew Burnap tried to remain diplomatic. He'd endured the pressures of live theater, so the chaos of filming wasn't new to him. But what blindsided him was the open hostility he felt from Zegler. She was the leading lady, and her stance seemed non-negotiable. As rehearsals progressed, rumors circulated that Zegler was rewriting scenes to fit her interpretation, pushing for script changes that favored her version of Snow White. Burnap, who'd studied every page of the screenplay meticulously, apparently found these spontaneous changes jarring. One day, a pivotal scene was suddenly scrapped and replaced with an entirely new sequence that Burnap first saw only hours before filming. He'd been prepared to deliver a show-stopping dramatic moment. Now, it was reduced to an afterthought, lost in the shuffle of last-minute rewrites. Close observers claim that behind the scenes, Burnap's expressions said it all. He was visibly frustrated, sometimes pacing around with script pages in hand, muttering about how they were ruining the entire flow. If he tried to raise objections, he was met with a cold stare from Zegler, who supposedly reminded everyone she was Disney's new star. In one instance, rumored to have happened in front of half the cast, Burnap attempted to give creative input on how their characters could build chemistry. Zegler apparently shot down his idea with a dismissive wave. The silence that followed was described as suffocating, with crew members shifting uncomfortably, unsure whether to support Burnap or keep their heads down and avoid her wrath. Word spread quickly that Burnap felt sidelined. Some alleged that he even confronted a producer, expressing concern that these changes were eviscerating the film's heart. But the producer, caught in a bind between pleasing the star and staying true to the project's vision, offered no clear resolution. As tensions flared, smaller annoyances magnified, stories emerged of Rachel Zegler being late to set, Andrew Burnap stewing in a corner, trying to run lines with a stand-in. Even everyday interactions, like how they greeted each other in the morning, grew frosty. The rest of the cast felt stuck in the crossfire, forced to pick a side or remain in awkward neutrality. The environment was toxic, and no one could pretend otherwise. The tension wasn't just rumored, it was practically visible, crackling in the air, and overshadowing what should have been a thrilling reimagining of a timeless fairy tale. All that backstage drama might have stayed behind closed doors if the movie had soared at the box office. But it didn't. In fact, Snow White tanked so spectacularly that industry pundits labeled it one of the biggest underperformers in Disney's modern history. Reports suggest the film only pulled in around $30 million during its opening weekend. Devastating numbers for a project rumored to have cost well over $200 million. By week 2, the drop-off was catastrophic, sinking by more than 60%. Analysts quickly blamed the misguided marketing and the swirl of negative press. But fans had their own theories. Zegler's comments had turned people off. The classic fairy tale lovers felt betrayed by her cynicism, and they refused to support a project they believed mocked their cherished childhood memories. Disney tried rolling out desperate promotional stunts to salvage the film. They pushed teaser clips, behind-the-scenes footage, and even used cameo appearances by other famous Disney faces to stoke interest. Yet, the rumor mill had already churned out so many negative headlines that audiences refused to bite. Social media was ablaze with hashtags calling for boycotts, insulting the new direction the film took, and shaming Zegler for her seemingly arrogant portrayal. Then came the critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film's approval rating plummeted. Across mainstream media outlets, reviewers tore into the plot changes, the lack of enchanting visuals, and the disjointed performances. Some singled out Andrew Burnap's character for lacking chemistry with Zegler, but they mostly pinned the blame on the unbalanced script and a lead actress who seemed to scorn the material. Industry analysts pointed out that while Andrew Burnap had minimal control over production decisions, he stood to suffer by association. He was painted as part of a fiasco that audiences despised. Overnight, the once bright halo around his name began to dim. Potential new collaborators saw him tied to a flop, overshadowing his Tony-winning talent. Meanwhile, inside Disney's boardrooms, executives were in full panic mode. They'd expected a juggernaut success, only to find themselves explaining, massive losses to shareholders. The cinematic meltdown was so severe that rumors of future live-action adaptations, like Tangled, were put on ice. With Snow White hemorrhaging money, the entire blueprint for Disney's upcoming remakes was abruptly cast into doubt. Amid this storm of bad press and plummeting ticket sales, Andrew Burnap's frustration reached a boiling point. Whispers from insiders paint a picture of a star who, after enduring weeks of creative clashes, subpar reviews, and fan backlash, finally snapped. Rumor has it that during a routine promotional interview, a journalist brought up the behind-the-scenes tension. Burnap, visibly agitated, didn't mince words. While he didn't directly mention Zegler by name, the coded references were obvious. He spoke about certain lead figures who wouldn't compromise, about how the movie was a far cry from the script he originally signed onto, and how disheartening it felt to have every creative discussion shut down. That might have been the beginning of the end. A swirl of unnamed sources soon claimed that Burnap was telling confidants he'd never work with Rachel Zegler again. He didn't appreciate her unilateral decisions, her flippant remarks about the classic film, and her alleged disregard for collaborative storytelling. To him, the production had been hijacked. Some say he vented about how Snow White was stolen from the collective creativity of the cast and turned into a vanity project for one star. He apparently believed that if the original vision had been preserved, the film might have soared, or at least avoided such a humiliating downfall. In those final days of press tours, the tension was palpable. Burnap sometimes looked tense, forced to answer questions with a polite grin. But behind the scenes, rumors claim he was livid and refused to be near Zegler unless absolutely necessary. When asked for joint interviews, he allegedly refused, citing scheduling conflicts. But most fans and analysts guessed the real reason. The two simply couldn't be in the same room without the tension boiling over. This outburst, combined with the film's abysmal performance, placed Burnap in a precarious position. On one hand, he wanted to salvage his dignity and speak the truth about his experience. On the other, he knew that publicly criticizing a high-profile co-star could blackball him in an industry that prizes image and brand loyalty above all else. In the end, it seemed, he chose honesty over politics, unleashing comments that left no doubt about his stance. No matter how many times Zegler or Disney tried to spin the narrative, the rift was too wide to hide. Burnap made it clear. Working with Rachel Zegler again was out of the question. When the story of Burnap's frustrations leaked, the public seized on every rumor. Fans either praised him for standing up to what they deemed Zegler's arrogance or condemned him for stirring up more drama. Hashtags began circulating, with many pointing fingers at Zegler for not respecting the legacy of Snow White. Others argued Burnap was overreacting, painting him as unprofessional for airing dirty laundry. Social media became a battleground of conflicting viewpoints. Memes and short video edits popped up, splicing clips of Burnap's interviews with old Snow White moments, often highlighting the jarring contrast between a wholesome fairy tale and a fiasco-laden film set. Zegler defenders insisted that any actress would want to modernize a story from 1937, while critics fired back that her approach was insulting to the timeless charm Disney fans expected. In Hollywood's inner circles, the fiasco quickly became the cautionary tale of the season. No one wanted to sign up for a project that could blow up in their face like Snow White. Casting directors started treading carefully around both Zegler and Burnap. While Burnap had the sympathy of many who admired his theater background, they also worried if he'd become difficult after such a debacle. Disney, meanwhile, found itself on the receiving end of blame from all sides. Some employees argued that the studio should have reined in Zegler's bold changes, while others believed Disney should have protected her from the harsh fan base. Internally, it became clear they needed a major course correction if they ever hoped to restore faith in their live-action formula. Industry buzz suggested that marketing teams were spooked. Multiple major studios were rumored to be reevaluating their big-budget fantasy remakes, afraid of encountering a similar meltdown. If a classic fairy tale like Snow White could flop, then nothing was sacred. Agents began coaching their clients to ask more questions before signing on to reimagine versions of beloved classics. As for Andrew Burnap, some insiders thought this fiasco might ironically boost his career, framing him as a voice of reason who valiantly fought to preserve the film's integrity. Others feared he'd face backlash for criticizing a lead actress, jeopardizing future roles in an industry that can be unforgiving. He was now at a crossroads, unsure if the world would see him as a hero for calling out nonsense, or as an agitator who bucked Hollywood protocol. And so ends the saga that was supposed to be Disney's triumphant reawakening of its oldest princess. Instead, Snow White turned into a cautionary tale riddled with friction, arrogance, and a catastrophic box office flop that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Andrew Burnap stepped into this production full of optimism, only to become disillusioned by the chaos he found. Rachel Zegler once, "It's a story that will linger in Hollywood lore for years to come, a testament that even the mightiest studios can stumble when hubris and miscalculated risks collide." And for anyone else in Tinseltown flirting with rewriting, a cherished classic, let Snow White serve as a warning. One misstep, and a dream can turn into a dreaded cautionary tale overnight.